Hey gang, welcome back to Style Solutions. As always, I'm Coach Greg. Today we're talking about how to fight a boxer. Boxers, in theory, are very simple to fight because they have a very limited tool set. And yet they easily overcome a lot of other styles because the tools that they have, they're very good at using. They're very good at pressuring forward to get to the range that they want to be in. It's much easier to close a range than to keep it open. They're very good at accuracy, doing a lot of damage. They're used to taking a shot. They have a tight guard. They're very effective at what they do, and they have a lot of pressure testing to really master their skill set. So it's a very dangerous thing to face off against. And of course, there's a couple different styles of boxing we're going to talk about today. But there's some general principles as well. So I'm going to start off by talking about a very classic style, like an Olympic style boxer here, with what you normally see people starting off with, okay? There's a couple things that are really great that you can do against a boxer because they are kind of limited. I like to do a lot of attacking the legs. That's of course a weakness of theirs because they're putting that weight on that front leg and they're not usually used to protecting it. And a lot of front kicks right up the middle are really great because this area here tends to not get protected very well against something like a front kick coming at an upward angle. Front kicks are general, same thing to the face. They're not as good at defending those. When you talk about uppercuts, you know, they're really good at defending that kind of stuff. But right here, as that front kick coming up at that angle, it throws them off. And it's a weapon that I consistently use very well. But that's from the outside range. So the big concern is when they start closing that gap. And generally what I like to do is start to really beat them in the clinch. Now the thing that you gotta be aware of is in a clinch, their most dangerous weapon is an uppercut. So you gotta be prepared for that uppercut as well. But entering into any type of clinch is always very effective because they don't have as many weapons from that tie-up that they're used to using. If I can get you in a plumb clinch, I can start throwing these knees up here, pulling down that head and being very dangerous, coming over top with these elbows. But I do have to still be on the lookout for that uppercut coming. So being ready to get like a knee on the inside, getting, dropping a hand here, keeping my head tight, whatever I need to do to make sure I'm not eating that quick uppercut. They might throw some quick hooks and stuff like that, but those are not nearly as damaging as the weapons I'm gonna be using with my knees and elbows. I can also start thinking about takedowns, getting to an over-under, places like that. If you have a good takedown and ground game, that's obviously a place where you're gonna be much stronger. And particularly when they start pressuring me back and I feel like they're putting me on my heels, I usually like to come underneath, get that takedown. Whether I'm doing a Greco style takedown or whether I'm just shooting for a single or double, I find that's often the best solution. So I pick them apart from the outside, attack the legs, and as they come forward, I shoot underneath, using that pressure against them to take them down and take advantage of that. So when you have the skill sets, it's actually pretty easy to deal with. But what happens a lot of times is people use some of the wrong techniques. So for example, a roundhouse kick is a very bad weapon to use against a boxer because they're very tight here, so you're not gonna do a lot of damage. And what's worse is you are gonna put yourself in a tight range where they're gonna be right in the pocket on you, and you're gonna have a hard time defending against it. It's just not a good weapon for that. I would focus more on lateral techniques, just like we do against a wrestler, keeping them at bay. A couple other things I wanna discourage. Whenever you're fighting somebody who is a good boxer, don't start doing a lot of pulls because they're going to start putting you back on your heels and then it's going to be a really bad night for you. So you really want to stay away from doing this a lot. I would highly encourage, if you do find yourself doing this, you either need to roll underneath to get to that takedown or start doing a separate step back, create that space, frame out and roll under is usually what I like to do. So if I find myself here, I'll put my frame out, obstruct the lane, and then slip out. Now, the Nemean fight system works really well for this because it does a lot of lane obstruction. I like using a long guard a lot to close this lane, particularly because it puts me at an outside range. I like to do a lot of open stance fighting against guys who are boxers because I want to create more of a range. Then, as they pressure forward, like I said, it's then clinches and takedowns. Now, that's more against a classic style boxer. When you start talking about some variations, there's some very easy stuff you can do for those as well. Now, Philly shell, the big thing here is that they're going to close up a lot of these lanes. What works really well is a dropping roundhouse kick coming over this shoulder. So this is a good time to start coming downward on top of that. That technique works really, really well against that. The other thing you can keep in mind, it's a good time to start kicking them in the back. They're not used to taking really hard shots to the lower back. So if it's a fight, really lay into their lower back using a good, powerful roundhouse. This is actually the time you want to use it. Yes, it puts you at range, but you got to close up. But when you really lay into that lower back, it can be very damaging. It's not something you can do normally in a lot of sporting situations, and they're not used to having to deal with real damage. Of course, leg kicks are still viable, but a lot of times what I'm going to try to do is when somebody gets shelled up here, I'm going to start thinking about things like pulling the head down to a knee. Like I said, clinches are really going to be your friend when you talk about boxers because they're very limited about the way that they're used to engaging with it. Same thing with like peekaboo. When you get guys who do this and they're really going to try to close this range, right? And they're going to try to get on the inside. Beautiful time to snap the head down and go for knee strikes. Snap the head down and shoot underneath. Snap the head down and guillotine. I like a lot of snap downs against peekaboo fighters because they're going to try to be in real close here, and as soon as they do, I like to pop them down and take advantage of that. So those are mostly how I like to fight those styles. Peekaboo, I also like to do a lot of knee strikes right at the center. I let them engage close. You got to watch out that they're going to try to turn on the side on you. So make sure that you're using tools to keep them in front of you. Be prepared to start changing angles on them because as they start stepping in, he's going to want to cut to a corner. So I got to be ready to pivot out and start throwing strikes up the middle. Doing snap downs to keep him from doing that. That's why I like the snap down so much because as he starts coming here, if he starts trying to cut to an angle here, with his head, I can start pulling him down and make that, really take out all the viability of that. So that's basically the key things I look for when I start talking about fighting a boxer. Other things that you might find is if you do start fighting yourself here, you can either roll under or start spinning out to a spinning bottom fist, stuff like that. That's the majority of what I like to do. I hope this helps you. Make sure you leave in the comments below if there's other things that you like to do when you're fighting a boxer.